Alrighty. Practice underwater Friday morning. How was that alrighty, George? You like it?
I think I should start calling you George. Yeah, that was great. I think the alrighty, the all needs to be a little bit short. Alrighty.
Okay.
Welcome back to Practice Underwater.
One of these times I'll do a full episode in your voice, just like full on, and even things you would say.
Yeah, the audience would be so lucky to hear that.
I agree. All right, so we have a really cool one. This doc did a startup about a year ago and is literally just crushing it. I do a lot more interviewing on this episode than I do coaching because I'm just, I don't have a lot to add. She is really impressive and has built an amazing office in such a short amount of time. So I think it's really cool to see after that bit of a startup debacle we had a few months ago, which may have scared some people, George.
Yeah, and I think as a big startup proponent myself, being incredibly sarcastic right now, it is nice every once in a while hear about a good story with a startup. And, this will be cool. And I think a lot of times, and I've done this before too, when you have a guest and you recognize something that they've done very well or they do very well, one of my favorite things about Practice Underwater is that, I'm almost the guest all the time, which is my favorite thing to do. But I think every once in a while you need to kind of turn chairs and really let that doc be the guest. And I think that's something that, this is a great example of.
Yeah. And especially with a startup thing, I don't have any experience in a startup and I don't have a lot of knowledge of that. So it was more of that interview style. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll jump into it. This is Dr. Sarah. All right, guys, welcome back. Another episode of Practice Underwater. Another fake name, real guest on here. She started a practice about 11 months ago. And this is going to be a good interview because it's going to be, startups are not something I'm super familiar with. So I think I and the listeners will learn a lot from having this person on. She goes by Dr. Sarah. So Dr. Sarah, welcome on.
Hey, Matt. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. So why don't you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about you and this practice you're now an owner in?
Yeah, so the practice is actually, we just turned one in December 2019. So that's exciting. It's a scratch startup. We started with 0 patients, but we've been incredibly blessed to see good, healthy new patient numbers. And then personally, as a dentist, I've been out of dental school 4 years. And I've been lucky enough to be in associateships before this, where I learned a bunch of stuff. And I like doing most general dentistry procedures. So just worked a lot. The first 2 years got quick, still learning, but I just felt like I was comfortable opening up a practice. And yeah, I took breakaway. Read a bunch of the Facebook groups and kind of followed what most people said, be open extended hours, be open weekends. We spent a lot on marketing and we still are. And I think that's also helped us grow tremendously. So we try to kind of not make any mistakes. I've made plenty as being a boss and being a leader, and that's an area that still is very, very challenging. But yeah, here we are, and I know we're good. I know we can kill it and get better, and I'm constantly trying to look for ways to grow.
Yeah, and I don't want to bury the lead here. Dr. Sarah has an extremely impressive startup practice, so we're going to make that clear from the get-go. Like she's crushing it. So I didn't want to let that be unsaid till we get to the numbers, but she's already at 100,000 collections. She's got 1,000 patients. Like she's very far advanced in her startup. So I want to backtrack a bit and talk about why you went the startup route and hear more about how you got ready for that process.
Yeah. So I never knew it. So my husband, he said, because every time I'd come home after working, I worked at a local DSO and then a private practice. He said, you don't look happy. And I was like, no, everything went well. So he just kind of figured that I just wasn't happy wherever I was. And he said, you know what, honey, let's just go ahead and have something of our own. And he actually, the credit goes to him. He comes from an entrepreneurial background. My father-in-law has several businesses. So does my mother-in-law. So does my husband. And now he's, kind of gone the corporate way. But they were really, all three of them were really my support to start or venture into going into having my own practice. Now, the city that we're in, there weren't a lot of really good opportunities for practice acquisition, which I've heard every podcast twice over for shared practices the first couple seasons. So I knew early on what we were looking for, and those were just either were very overvalued, old school fee for service practices that I knew I'd be taking some insurances. So then the valuation just drops a whole bunch. So then at some point we decided that we didn't want to wait around anymore. And then we took Breakaway. We scouted a bunch of locations, and we were blessed. It took about a year start to finish for our practice to open. So that's actually from the time that we went to Breakaway and started looking at locations. I think we're pretty lucky in that timeline. For a lot of people, it takes a lot more. And my husband does well financially. So about 3 months before we were set to open, I quit my full-time job. Of course, we'd saved, and we'd saved for this as well. But I was, I said, hey, if I'm going to open up a restaurant, I just don't want to open up Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I want to open all the days that I can. So that's the approach we took, that we were just going to dive in head on. And then I did a lot of ground marketing. I visited a lot of smaller businesses, boosted social media presence. So in about 2 weeks before we were going to open, my husband and I got lunch in one of the restaurants here, and they immediately said, "Hey, you're the dentist that's opening your doors." And I was just like, "Yeah, well, it's working." So I was just very blessed to have that 3-month lead time where I could market a whole bunch and just focus on all those things, because I knew I wouldn't have time once we started.
Yeah. I mean, I love how you handled that. So I'm a big Shark Tank fan. So I'm like a wannabe entrepreneur in that sense. And they love businesses where like the creator is just like on fire going for it. Like they always hate like when they have another job and they're like tipping their toe in. So I love how you did it, where you just like went all in. We're just going to be open all the hours. Like I'm not having a part-time associate job. I'm just doing it. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I was very lucky, because I know a lot of my friends started up their practices around the same time, and they just haven't had that opportunity. So
what did you like specifically take away from Breakaway? Were you strict on what they taught you, implemented and used their build out, or how did you learn the knowledge? How did you get the knowledge you gained at Breakaway? How did you use that?
So just sort of a very lean startup. I took my husband there, so he just said, "Honey, dental stuff I didn't know was just so way overpriced." He said, "I'm going to make hand pieces and sell it to dentists for $10,000, and they're going to buy it, because that's how stupid we are." No, we just were very strict with budgeting. And one thing that my husband was very, very, very driven towards was spending a lot of money on marketing, and that's what we did. So there, the working capital or the budgeting was just super, super narrowed down, so that we would have about $80,000 that first year just to spend on marketing. So, and then we just followed their sort of lean build design. Our practice, I think, looks nice and clean and modern, but there's some other palaces out there. So, but to us, those things weren't important if we didn't have patients in through our door. So, we just followed their guidelines with respect to that. And of course, we hired some independent help, like our contractors and our architects. But yeah, we just kind of stuck to their recipe for the most part.
Nice. For someone who's thinking about doing a startup, what advice could you give them based on your experiences?
The only thing that I'll say is people often run out of money, and then you're in that tough situation where you're not making money to spend it on advertising, Google ads, or whatever the case is. So consider marketing as a human being who you're going to give a salary, maybe a 6-figure salary that first year. And demographics work. So several of my friends have said, "Oh yeah, demographics, we just have good visibility. We don't care about demographics." But if there's no need, you can spend all the money in the world And, what's going to differentiate you from someone else who's been around and who's been in an established practice? So yes, leave enough money for marketing. And if you're going to listen to your consultant or listen to Breakaway, then leave your common wisdom behind, because this is not an area that dentists excel at. We might be good at dentistry. I don't know if I'm generalizing here, but I'm not really good at some of the other stuff.
Yeah. And I love how you put that. Like, it's just like another human on your salary. Like you on your payroll, like you need to treat it that way, or else if you underspend, like you're going to have a very slow growth, and you certainly have not. So I want to get deep into the marketing piece, because I know for myself and a lot of dentists out there is big confusion around it. And obviously whatever you're doing is working. So like, shed some light on how you've been so successful with your marketing.
Yeah, so I read several books, and then I've actually heard a lot of podcasts, and I think the book that changed it for me was To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink, where he said, you're either in the business of selling things or you're in the business of buying things, and you'll realize very quick. And this also, I think has sort of gone towards treatment planning and how I approach that. But I'll break it down. So that first 3 months that we opened, we went on a marketing blitz. I think we spent about $12,000 each. We did 3 rounds of mailers. But my mailers were also very targeted. They had, three, I guess, offers or coupons. And then they just spoke about how we were open, weekends and open evening hours and all the insurances that we took. So we did 3 rounds of mailers, 1 each month. We spent about $6,000 on Google AdWords, and we are continuing to doing so. I spend about $400 or $500 boosting posts on Facebook, but none of the things that I do on social media or even our mailers, I have no stock pictures. So it's all very personalized, where people get to see my face. There was one with my family on it, one with our dog. And then I actually made a lot of gift baskets, and I went door to door and to small businesses, and I just gave it to them saying, hey, we're super excited. Everyone loves, I didn't realize how much people love a free toothbrush, toothpaste, and floss. So I made a whole bunch of bags, and I just kind of just give out as many as I could. I think I gave out about like 1,000 of those in a 1-2 mile radius of where my practice was going to be. So probably and then we did the first 3 months. Also, we did our local newspaper ads and magazine ads, and then I tested different markets with my mailers, and I realized that AdWords is where it's at, because those people are already looking for a dentist. And then we just got really good at getting people in same day. If someone was calling, everyone would leave what they were doing and then go grab the phone and then just say, hey, do you want to come in today? Or if it's an emergency patient, we got them in same day, no matter what.
So you touched on a couple of things there, but like, what do you think made the difference as far as like the reason your marketing was so effective? Like, was it the story you were portraying? Was it your extended hours? Was it just that you were outspending the competition? Like, how did you get such a foothold in this community so quickly?
So I think it was a little bit about, I think it was just ground marketing. It was just me going out there saying, hi, I'm the dentist. And it was very awkward in the beginning. And it was hard to say, hey, I'm the dentist, I'm going to open, but they would be like, okay, where's your practice? And I'd say it's in the new strip mall that's coming up. And they're like, we don't even know where the strip mall is. Cause like our whole complex was being built up. And I bought a bunch of like donuts and cupcakes and all of that. I did a lot of that. And I think that was important because people recall, like even now we're getting people, and then thereafter, we've done 2 ground marketing events every month. I think we stopped last fall, so we never stopped going out. Then I took my assistants, and then we actually had a place. So I think people, and I call the new patient experience before they even walk into our office. It's like online dating. They said, oh, well, we saw you in the fall here, and then we saw your mailer again, and then I told my husband I have to come, but then we looked at you if you took our insurance, and you did, and then we looked to see if we could book on a Saturday, and then we read your reviews, and then I sent my kids, and they came back, and they weren't worried, so now I'm here. And then, that lady had like 10 things that were wrong, but we had to pass through her screening process. So that's, I think, our our new consumer is well informed. They do their research for the most part, and you have to not get one thing right. You have to get everything right. So if you ask me if it was one thing, I probably would hesitate to say. I think it might be just putting myself out there, but really, we have 300 plus reviews on Google in that 1 year. So it's just, and then they're actually really, I'm proud to say they're very high quality, where patients have written paragraphs, and all we've done is have swell and ask them. But you have to get everything right, have a great, online presence, and then follow it up with good service at the office.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Like you're hitting like everything the patient is seeing about you is top notch. Like your website, the reviews, the hours, the insurances, like you're checking all the boxes and you're getting it from all different angles. So there's no more doubt. Even if they have to send, like you said, their kids, their wife first, like they're coming in. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
Because they're just seeing you from, they can't avoid you.
Yeah, and I was telling one of my friends, I was like, when I want them to think of their teeth, I want them to think of my practice. That's the only association they should ever have.
Mm-hmm. I love this. This is right up my alley. Like dominating the community. Like there is no other dentist in your town.
Yeah.
Like, there might be, but according to these people, you're the dentist. That's so good. I'm so jazzed up. That's so exciting. Wow. Honestly, very impressed. So talk to us more about your office, your staff, how everything's going with that.
Yeah, so when we started December 2018, I had one front desk girl slash, she was everything, and then one girl in the back, and then and we were open maybe just half the month in December, but very quickly I realized I needed one more person. Even if I, took the isolite, I still, we would just have people calling and we want to bring them in. So then we had a floater who did front and back. And then I would say that we're a little bit on the higher volume side, and that's just, because of the amount of marketing that we're doing, and we could probably be low volume, but as a new practice, and we'll probably talk about that later, I feel like establishing trust with some of these bigger treatment plans has been a little bit of a challenge. So then we said, okay, well, there was a lot of this insurance to verify and a lot of back and forth before the patients even came in. So then we had two girls in the front. And then I got another assistant in March. So that's 4 months after we opened. So then I had two girls in the front and then two in the back. And then at that point, it was really exhausting to do my own prophies, and I hate doing them. So I said, what is it going to take to get a hygienist? So then sure enough, in April, we had hygiene 2.5 days. And then in July, we had a full-time hygienist. So that's about 7 months from when we opened. And then now I have 2.5 assistants. So I have an assistant who comes on our busy days, which is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 assistants, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, otherwise 2. Then I have a hygienist. I have 2 girls in the front. What we outsource is someone verifying insurances and then someone following up on claims and posting checks with like the volume that we see. We just decided that it was just best to have the people that we have doing things that can't be outsourced, which is that patient communication, taking those 20 minutes to talk to a patient about their treatment, taking another 20 minutes to sign them up for care credit. So we have several people on our payroll. I think our overhead's kind of high, but the months that we do collect, let's say 100, we're right on at about 22% to 25%. Of course, some months, this year we started off great too, so it remains to be seen. But I think that it's going to affect us maybe a little bit or pinch us a little bit in some of the slower months. But I try not to have limiting beliefs about that.
What company do you use to verify insurance, and how's that going? Because that's like a key, a big confusion for dentists, I feel like.
Yeah, so my husband and I are do-it-yourselfers. So he found someone, and then let me give you a little background on him. So I haven't been fair. So we hired and fired 2 or 3 different SEO and Google AdWords, couple of different American-based companies. And why I say that, I'll tell you in a little bit. So then at some point he said, you know what, all these guys are charging way too much and doing nothing. So then he took a couple of courses on running our own Google Ads campaign. So that's what we're doing. We're probably not as efficient with spending, but you know what? The people who take $2,000, they probably spend about 800 of it on actual AdWords, and they pocket the 1,200. So we said, if we're going to go in big, we're going to put the money where we're seeing it. So he handles that. So he sets up every month, and we've tweaked it quite a bit. So he sets up all our campaigns and what we're trying to do. And he does that himself. So the second part of it is we tried a couple different insurance verification companies that were on one of the Facebook groups. And obviously it's never a perfect, it's never perfect. There's mistakes everywhere. But again, they were charging way too much, and we just felt like we could figure out something better. So he found on Upwork. First, he found a lady in the Philippines that would verify insurances for us, and she did great. But then she wasn't able to keep up with the flow, because we would have patients like same day, and we say, hey, Ruth, can you verify this? And she said, I just have 2 hours. I can't do it. So then we found another small company in India on Upwork again. And they're doing the verification. And for as we've turned, I think at our 6th or 7th month mark, it kind of got tiring to do extractions and root canals and fillings on PPOs, and I place implants. So now we get a detailed insurance verification form. And two of the things I really key in on are implants and what the coverage is, and then orthodontics, because we do Invisalign.
So you're still using the person in India now to do it?
Yeah. And they have 2 or 3 guys, so they've put 2 on our account, and I'll be in touch with them almost daily. And they've made mistakes, but at least I can grab a hold of someone who's doing it, and I can teach them what they need to learn. And so they do our verification. They'll post the checks, and then they'll follow up on smaller claim denials. I have Insurance Answers Plus here, who does some of our bigger claim denials. So she'll follow up. Our person there will follow up on some of the bigger stuff.
I may have to get their name off air, because this is right up my alley. As the audience knows probably by now, I'm biased against the big companies. Like, if I can find someone who's just a person doing it themselves from their basement, that's what I'd rather have.
Yeah.
I have a Facebook marketer who is a college dropout, and I'm pretty sure he lives with his mom. And he does amazing. So like, I love finding people like that, because they're more, I feel like they're more skilled than some of the big companies, and you don't get that upcharge.
Yeah. Which also, I don't mind paying someone, but then, they have to follow that up with service, right? That's our industry. So I can't have a patient in a chair who's ready to, do an implant, but we can't tell them what they're going to pay. So
absolutely. I mean, that would kill that patient experience that you're so harping on, like just right there. So how many ops is this office, and kind of what days are you open?
Yeah, so we started off actually, we're blessed. I wish now that we had more room, because we went by breakaway. So like each of our ops is 8.5 by about 11.5. So very breakaway style. I wish we had, we'd foreseen, but I think we're in a good position either way. So we started off outfitting 4. We have a total of 6. And then very quickly we outfitted the other 2, just because there was that, we were blessed with growth. So all of our ops are outfitted. My hygienist works out of 2 operatories. One's her main and one's her overflow. And then I try to work out of 2 operatories, but sometimes we're just running around. So sometimes I'll work out of 3.
Sure. And you're open Saturdays, you're open late nights as well?
Open every other Saturday, and then a couple days a week we're open till 6. So it's actually not even that late, but I need some rest. So we'll be open 5 days a week. The days that we're open Saturday, we're closed a weekday. So we still maintain a 5-day work week.
Awesome. So your first year open, you did about 815 collections. Like, what does the future hold for your office? Like, where do you see you guys going in 2020?
So we actually did about 953. Our December checks haven't been posted yet, and that's a little bit of a
outdated
problem.
Numbers I had here.
And it's what's on our practice management software. So we actually did closer to 953. I think the last several batches of checks didn't get posted. So that's a good question. I was asking myself. I said, hey, do I want to grow by 10, 20, or 30%? Because that's that's what Dental Intel has. And I said, hey, you know what? We're just going to grow by 50%. So that's what we're looking at. So January, not to boast, but it's just so incredible. In January of last year, I think our adjusted production was 80 something. This is mid-month, and we've already crossed what we did last year. So the sky's the limit. I don't want to hold anyone back, or myself or my team. So we hope to grow about 50%. And I think a big boost has been Invisalign, adding Invisalign to the practice. So
nice. And like, yeah, it was about 80 in adjusted production last January. The collections were 28. So like you have gone up, math, fourfold, fivefold.
yeah.
Really, really such incredible. So the number for 2020 you're shooting at is like a 1.5, 1.4 in that range?
So if we collected about 953-ish, I think, yeah, I'd like to see if we can collect about 1.5.
That's awesome. Like, I'm not in the startup world, so from the outside, this seems unusual. Is it unusual?
Yeah, so here in our town we have about four dentists. So myself, the fourth one, and we all started within months of each other. So two of them still have issues breaking even. One of them has severe cash flow issues, and then there's me. So now I just stay quiet because it's just, I want to offer them advice, but whatever I've said, it hasn't worked. So that when you said something about advice, I was just like, I don't want to give it if no one's going to listen. And I've seen that happen to them. They have beautiful practices, but there's barely any patients. None of them have the money to market. And they're all super capable dentists. So at least in the few I know, I think we're good. There's the other day I met a dentist in our town, and his practice has been open 2.5 years, and he does 2.5 million collection. Wow. So I said, hey, when I grow up, I want to be him. So he's my target. So now I keep trying to get him to go to dinner with me and ask him some questions.
Yeah, take all the advice. I think you're well on your way. It is, I got to say, it's practice underwater. Like, it's in the name, so we got to talk about some stuff that's wrong. So what's wrong?
The biggest problem is when we're adding patients at such a high click, I think that I can make my hygienist work harder. So she's seeing a bunch of new patients, but this is now, maybe January will be our second recall cycle. So I know that we have a lot of room to grow in hygiene. So one thing I want to improve is recall. The second thing I want to improve is, right now, sometimes we're so busy that we're not even able to follow up on patients that, because our treatment acceptance, according to Dental Intel, is 30%. So, I know that because I was listening to Practice by Numbers, so there's patient acceptance and treatment acceptance. I don't know what PBN says about patient acceptance, but just the number that I see. So just, have my hygienist work a little harder. She has holes in her schedule where I have no room to breathe. So one thing is I want to establish a good recare system. I know we have room to grow with our perio. So just very hygiene focused and hygiene related things. And then we're still struggling with recare. So it's been very challenging because we've gone through tremendous staff turnover in the front. We're so blessed that we haven't seen a true dip at any time an employee has left. But I had managed to find other strong, driven personalities in the front. But the problem with that is they won't take my direction or any direction. So so then that's the challenge, is they're not answerable. They're just like, this is too crazy, I can't deal with it. And I was just like, but I've given you a checklist of things to do. You have to follow the checklist. Don't break the template. So staff turnover and creating a strong team, just to be able to, because we're not a corporate, although we're sort of higher volume. And then also just sort of do more team driven production where it's not just dependent on me. And the last couple of things with Invisalign too, we had, I think, 3 or 4 different trainings where now the whole team talks about it with the patient, and I just go inside and I bless the case and I tell them how long it's going to take. So that's been working. So just more maybe team driven um, ideas for team driven production, and then figuring out a way to have patient retention, because I feel like we could be better with that, because we don't
Yeah. So
want to. Yeah.
you mentioned some turnover, like the staff you have now, like how are they functioning? Do you see this being your long-term staff going forward?
So no. We have one assistant who came, who joined my practice, and she has been the only one who's pretty much been there from the start. But what that's done is she knows our office system inside and out. So those are the systems that we try to enforce inside and out. So I'm grooming her for the front. So I think that she might be the true long term um, potential. I have a couple of others, and I'd love for them to stay, because it's not a good look when patients are like, "Oh, new faces every time." But then I say, "Hey, I'm still here." Um, but I don't think I'll see them. Um, I don't know. Maybe they'll surprise me, but um, if I demand 150% of myself, I demand 100% of them. So that's the challenge. So I think we'll continue looking for an efficient treatment coordinator. Um, and now we're in a unique situation where I have three girls in the front. Two of them are treatment coordinators, and one is a sort of a hygiene scheduler. Um, and there's a lot of finger pointing and stuff, but at least they can spend more time with the patient, because I'm getting busier and busier um, with treatments myself. So as I should. So
Can you decipher anything about your leadership style that may be hard for people to digest, or like is something along the lines of this turnover?
oh, absolutely. I think the first few people, um, and they all kind of quit, so I didn't have to fire anyone. But I think that so my leadership style, based on what I grew up around, was just like work very hard, and everyone's going to work really hard as well. And then just because, as I said, I demand 150% from myself, so of course they have to give me 100%. So all of those were were mistakes on my end. I think that I come across, so my disc assessment, I'm a high, like a D and a C. So I'm very driven, and therefore I guess I'm sometimes dominant in the office, which I think has, I think I have to thank myself in a way, and my husband, but I thank myself for getting to where we are. But then leadership, as you said, is not just one style of leadership. There's several different styles. So now I'm trying to be more of a mentor and a coach, but I'm very good at kind of reverting back to my original style of leadership. So that's been challenging. I think the last person who said she left said, "You're a bully and you micromanage, and you treat me like I'm a kid." And then I said, "Hey, factor friendly. This is why I micromanage, because a couple times I had her come in and I gave her literally a list of 5 things to do, and one of them was make 20 calls for recall, and she made 0 calls for recall. There were only 3 calls in a 5-hour period when the office was closed. So I just presented to her, and then she's like, "Yeah, but you can't come at me like that. That was only the 2 times that you did allow me to come when the office was closed." So yeah, so one thing I'm trying to do is focus a little bit more on team culture, where I feel like now that we're 6 people, but 7 including myself, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more unity. And I've actually taken a step back, and so now I let other people lead our morning huddles, and I let other people say, "Hey, let's see, where can we bring an emergency in today?" And then I'll have my assistant sort of lead that. I don't know if it's working, but I'm happier. So
I love this, because like this is the path of like a extremely driven, extremely bright, like go-getter. Like you have all the ideas, how everything should be run. So then you have the feeling to overstep yourself and get your hands in everyone's baskets, and that for a lot of staff members cannot be taken so well. So it's a great kind of realization you've made to kind of, okay, let's take a step back. Let me see if I can now empower my staff to delegate more, give them responsibility, and really just like let them run with it. I think that's like the opportunity for you in this coming years. Like you said, build that team, empower them, delegate, and let them impress you, honestly, which is probably
Yeah.
what will happen.
Yeah, and I'm very emotional too. So if I'm mad, you'll see it on my face, or you'll see it, or you'll hear it in the tone of my voice. Or if I'm frustrated, you'll see it right away. And I think for some not everyone works like my assistant who's been with me the longest. It's okay, like she'll brush it off like, oh, she's mad or frustrated, but not everyone else might take it personally. So I think it's been very challenging to mask my emotions, but I've been trying to do that, and I've been getting better. But I think the growth, it changes so hard. So that's one thing that I think is a goal for me, is to just be a better boss, leader, and a dentist. I think that never stops.
Yeah, I think that's like the key for you to getting that 1.5. Like, the steps, the marketing, the procedures, the communicating to patients, like all that. Like, there's nothing that I or anyone else are going to teach you that's going to make a difference. It's going to be like your leadership is either going to allow for that growth or hold you back.
Yeah.
Anything other like practice vision stuff before we take a look at your numbers?
Yeah, ideally I'd like to get maybe a second hygienist. I don't know. I mean, I hope that we can be ready for sort of a part-time associate, just to free up my time to do some of these bigger procedures. Like we're diving in deep into implants now. I'm training everyone on verbiage and things to say. So hopefully, and that's the only way I feel like we're going to get to some of these bigger numbers, is with some big ticket procedures. So so maybe getting an associate to free up some of my time, because I don't like seeing more than a few fillings on my schedule. And then, I think of it as, even if my schedule, and then this might be the wrong way to go about it, but even if I have some holes in my schedule, I can just spend that extra time with a patient and talk them through their treatment, where I don't have to feel like I'm rushed. Or so that's another problem, time management, because I take time to, almost every patient that I meet every day is a new patient in some sort. So I feel like I need to take enough time to hear them and to present what we might need to present, but that's cutting away from 20 minutes from my treatment. So we're always running behind, and it's very important to me to run on time, because our patients are spending, they don't have all day, but they're spending it with us. So, and that just goes as part of the patient experience. So I keep telling everyone, I was like, don't put any more, but they're so used to, accommodating our patients and putting them in same day. I said, no, I can't see one more, crown seed. If I prep 10 crowns a day, I'd love to see 10 crown seeds, but there's no reason why there should be more than one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So maybe having an associate to free my time, even if it was to be able to nurture our team members, or maybe having another hygienist, so that my hygienist has more time to do. So what we're really good at is with same day conversion. So she'll do a same day SRP if she needs to. We'll figure it out. So maybe having another hygienist part time and then full time.
Yeah. By when do you want the next hygienist? Because it sounds to me like you're getting ready for it.
Yeah. So on Saturdays, we already have 2 hygienists, because it's a shorter day. So we work through lunch. So we have 2 hygienists as well. Maybe by the summer of this year. And then I can get an associate. I think isn't the wisdom like 2 hygienists to a doctor schedule? I don't know what the industry wisdom is, but that's what someone told me.
Yeah, I mean, ideally the 2 hygienists for 1 doctor, but you're so bursting at the seams with doctor production that it may be 2 hygienists for 2 doctors might be even sufficient.
Yeah.
Because you're doing a lot of high value stuff, and I'm just curious, like how are you doing? Like, how's your well-being going? Like, I can imagine these days are pretty hectic for you, pretty busy. Like, how is everything as far as like your stamina going?
Yeah, it waxes and wanes. Definitely some days I feel a little bit burnt out, and then it gets overwhelming where work's not stopping, even if we're person less, because of the turnover or whatever the case might be. I think now I'm at a place where, again, it's a little bit of a mindset change. When I'm driving to work, I think about 3 things that I'm grateful for, however small they are. So that's been helping. I've been doing that for about 3 or 4 months. So that's been helping. I do wish we had more, everyone says, I do wish we had more free time, but I've been blessed again. We put in the hard work and we're getting the rewards for it. So, and it's almost instant, and hopefully it'll be long term. But yeah, I do want to take a step back as, I'm not getting, this might be TMI, but I'm not getting any younger. So we want to start on a family as well. So all of that, and that's part of the reason why I said I want to do more team driven sort of production where I do have that flexibility if the team's in place to maybe step back. So what we're trying to maybe do this year is also cut back to like 4 days of true production. I can come in the extra day and finish up admin stuff, but where I just don't have to see patients. So that's another thing that I'm kind of experimenting with.
Yeah, there's definitely a breakthrough in there for you with time management, with well-being, with like really making this practice, like now that you have it built up to a certain level, making it more fit around your life and your like family goals and like what serves you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this was a great introduction to your practice. We're going to pause here and come back next week and really get into the numbers. I have to tell the audience, you're a Dental Intel user. We'll get into a little debate the next time. So we'll see you guys next week with Dr. Sarah. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that first part of the interview with Dr. Sarah and her startup practice, which I guess is not really a start. What is the time where you're actually just a normal practice? What's the time frame?
I feel like a year.
Yeah. So she's getting into that established practice.
It is a big transition for people who do a startup to like get out of startup mode. Because think about it, it's like 18 months before you open, you're in startup mode that's 2.5 years of your life that you are very in a startup. And then you're like, oh, wow, now I have like an existing practice that's going to be here for a long time. Like that's a big mindset shift.
Yeah. And I want to talk about back to her startup phase. Like when she was not working as a dentist, she was basically just a full-time dental marketer for 3 months, where she invested a lot of time, of her own time, a lot of money into this marketing. I think really set her up for success in this first year. So George, talk about like that full commitment to marketing that some startups achieve and some startups may fall short on.
Yeah, I think marketing is one of those areas that, like, look, it's super important. Like, there's no way around it. If you want any type of growth in your practice that's beyond like 20, 30%, you have to aggressively market. And like, she got it, and I think that's the one thing that really sticks out is the amount of money. Like, most docs who do a startup are like, okay, keep my budget, like very minimal. And she's like, I'm all in, and it's not one of those things that you're going to see right away. And I think that's a hard part for dentists is like, you have to lose money in marketing a little bit to make money long-term. And I think that concept is very difficult. Like I run into that resistance a lot. And like, if you want to look at reasons why she's successful, 1, 2, 3, marketing.
Yeah. And I want to touch on the quick dichotomy of she was so committed to the ground marketing, and George, just thinking about yourself doing ground marketing just is like night and day of where this person was.
I'm shaking my head right now, and at the idea of me doing any type of ground marketing, no. I mean, I would rather not have a patient that I have to go get myself. Absolutely. No, for sure. Like, yeah, I view marketing as dollars for patients. Yes, it is an equation, and I win, but like, I don't want to. No.
Yeah, it's not dollars and time for patient.
Yeah, and like, you're right, you have these guys who are like, oh, I'm getting so many patients for so little. Great, but that probably requires a lot of your time and effort, and I'm just unwilling to do that.
Right. And that time has a dollar amount that they're not factoring in. They're just factoring in dollars spent.
Their time is free, and they're willing to put their face everywhere and, talk about things that I'm not. And yeah, I mean, it's just totally different.
And I want to harp on an idea too that I mentioned in this interview is that I mentioned I was a big Shark Tank fan. I don't know, George, I don't know if you ever watched Shark Tank.
I'm a big Shark Tank fan myself, yes.
Good. So the ones they really get jazzed up about, and you probably made this note as well, is the ones where like the owners are back against the wall, all in. Like they're going to do what it takes to win. They don't have a fallback plan. They don't have a second career. They don't have a part-time job. They are doing this full time. And like that's the ones they look for, and assuming that the numbers all match up, that they really invest in. So I loved how that was her mindset. Let's not just phase into this startup slowly like some people do. Let's just go for it.
Okay, so two things about that. Almost nobody who is involved in startups recommends that. That doesn't work if she didn't do all the marketing stuff.
Right.
Like, right. I want that to be very clear to the audience, because I don't want somebody to listen to this and be like, oh, cool, I'll go all in and I'll have a great results like this, but like this doc. Well, you better go all in and $80,000 in 3 months of your time. Like, it's not just quit your job and dedicate your full life to your practice and not have enough patients. And now like you're all in, but you're all in.
Yeah.
Not
it depends how fast you want to grow. Like she wanted to be a full-time office from the start as quickly as possible. Whereas that might not be everyone's goal.
And like, you have the corporate offices that like will open an office with a doctor, a hygienist, a front desk, an assistant, and they lose money for the first 2 years. You can't do that. So like, I think the associateship is a very responsible thing to do. Like, again, I try to talk about startups as little as possible, but if you're going to do one, I definitely love the associate while you open your startup and let it grow route for sure. I mean, I like this doc made it work. But that is all in scary, that's scary. Yeah.
And we'll touch on this. Thanks for that viewpoint, George, that, this office she built is kind of very dependent on her, and that shows, in what she's built, that it's getting into that associate realm is going to be a little bit more challenging for her than for some.
Well, I think we should just talk about that now, because I think that's the one thing that, like, looking at the practice by numbers, you're like, wow, she's killing it, right? And it's all because of her, right? So like I kind of said reasons 1, 2, 3 marketing, but really it's not, right? Marketing's 1, but then 2 is diagnosis, 100%. I think, $400,000 of diagnosis on the practice by numbers snapshot that we have in a month by a solo doc with one hygienist. I've seen one other doc that has that. And, her fees those are gross fees. So realistically, when we do the adjustment, like it's probably like $300,000 of diagnosis, but still like that's an insane amount for one doctor. And that's the biggest reason in my mind. And so like, well, what is the thing that you're doing when you're hiring an associate? You're hiring somebody with a different diagnostic lens, right? So that number is going to go way down. And then that's where, it gets very challenging for a doc like this to have an associate. And you just like, you have to bombard them with patients that, will really, so yeah, that's the big challenge she has going from a doctor-dependent practice to a associate-driven practice. And I think our first doc ever, Jane, very similar situation, startup, very, very great diagnoser, and that's part of the reason why she was successful.
And is she going through that similar struggle of finding an associate, seeing that lower diagnosis, or she's not to that point yet?
I don't think she has an associate yet. I haven't talked to her in a while, so I'm not totally sure.
Okay. Any other thoughts for part 1 before we see everyone next week?
No, I think we'll see them all next week, and I know that it'll be a fun one. We're going to talk about morning huddles in the outro and part 2, and that'll be a good discussion. Kind of like the marketing one we had today.
Yeah, not really so much in our wheelhouse as the numbers and metrics and stuff like that are, but I think it's useful for everyone to hear.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm excited for next week. And again, when you guys listen to this, really listen to the doc that's talking. I think that very much it should be the source of information as much as Matt.
Absolutely.
I think she's killing it.
All right, so we'll see everyone next week on Practice Underwater.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we could look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.